He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
You know, it's really sad to say, but it is actually true. I was married close to 15 years before I really understood how hard my wife's job was. Just being a wife and a mother. I had no concept because I was working 50, 60 hours a week. There was a season when my kids were still toddlers, between 2 and 6 years old, that I had 4 jobs. I worked a regular 50-hour job week. Then I came home for another part-time job in the evenings. And when they didn't have work for me, I had another part-time job in the evenings. And then on the weekends, we had a dedicated part-time job that we shared. That went on for probably 3 years. And with all of the work and all of the travel and all of the constantly gone to the job, I had no idea what my wife did while I was not home all day. I assumed it was nothing because that's the way I perceived the results. That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. And I hate to say that it's true, but it is true. I had no understanding at all of the work that went into being the mother of toddlers. None at all. I had no idea what it meant to change 3 or 4, 5, 6, 12, 57 diapers in a day. I had no idea what it meant. We went for a season. If you do the math, we had kids born in 95, 97, and 98. So there was a season of about 6 years where there was a diaper on somebody's backside pretty much every day, which meant my wife went for 6 or 7 years without not having to change diapers. She had to change diapers constantly and bathe them and feed them and homeschool them and whatever else had to be done around the house. And I had no appreciation for that at all because I was clueless. Now, it doesn't mean what I did in life was boring and without effort and required nothing of me. There was a lot of work that I had to do as well. There was a lot of expectations on me with all the different jobs and leadership roles and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I still had no appreciation for what she was going through until I was left, because I had transitioned from full-time employment to working for myself. I was left at home with a fistful of grandkids for a while. And it began to dawn on me how complicated it is. I thought, well, they sleep most of the day, right? The little infants, you put them in the crib, you check on them if they cry or if they fuss or, just because they get too quiet. And you go about your business, you get your work done. I was wrong. Yeah, that it is not an overseer's job to be a parent of a toddler or an infant. There is no overseeing there. It is 24/7 constant attention. There is never a moment not to be deeply engaged. You think you're going to get a cup of coffee or a glass of water or a glass of iced tea and put your feet up while they nap and fill that iced tea glass, and they will hear the ice cubes crackle when the tea hits it. They will be in your lap. They will be screaming. They want your attention. They want it now. Now, if you are a father and you're not deeply engaged in the daily lives of your toddler children or your infant children, time for a wake-up call. If you're a mother and you work full-time and somebody else is doing all that work, then you may have a different level of understanding and appreciation even than the mother who is a full-time stay-at-home mom with a fistful of kids. when I see the moms loading their kids in the car and strapping in the car seats and loading up the strollers in the back, and they've got 4 or 5 of them to keep up with, like my wife did at one point. We had 4 of them that needed help getting in and out of the car, strapping on their seatbelts, tying them into their car seats. That's no easy task. That's no small task. Just to go to the grocery store and pick up a gallon of milk is a 45-minute get in the car adventure and a 2-minute trip there and a 45-minute get out of the car adventure. Again, complicated stuff that if you have no understanding of it, you have very little appreciation of it. I get very frustrated whether you're talking about mechanics or music. I've been spending the last few days working on a bid for a client for a big event that they're doing to help with their AV. And when you hit them with the price of what it's going to cost to have all of the equipment that they desire, you would think you're speaking a foreign language to them. But they have no idea what the technical difficulty is to pull off what they want to see as an end result. They just know what they want to see as an end result. And they might be grateful that you have put it all together, but they don't have the same level of appreciation they would have if they had full understanding. Now, this is a real principle that translates across every area of life. If you're a leader in any capacity, and you undervalue the work that your employees do, if you don't understand the tasks that are necessary to pull off the end game of the goal or the vision you've put in front of them, well, it's great. It's absolutely imperative that you as a leader establish a vision, identify the goals along the way, set up the processes and the steps that can be clearly articulated so people know what they need to accomplish. But if along the way to that goal or accomplishment, you haven't helped yourself to understand what it is that the tasks require of the people who are doing them, then you may be grateful when they're done, but you will have no appreciation of the people who have invested in them. See, the whole labor union's idea, the whole fight of the Marxists was to say, we have these elites at the top of the tower, and they're the ones that kind of have it all nailed. They get all the money from all of our work, and they have no idea how hard the work is that we do. They don't know what labor is like. Well, there may be some truth to that, but I have to tell you, there are a lot of people who made it to the top of their industry, their company, their business. They became the CEO because they started in the bottom. They started off washing cars or in the mailroom or sorting the mail or picking up the garbage and cleaning up around the building. And they've invested in themselves and they've studied and they've worked. Not all, but many of the top leaders in many organizations didn't start off anywhere near the top. They started off in the bottom or maybe in the middle, but they came to the middle with some experience and some education. Few are the people who simply get a college degree or get the education and then step right into the top rung of an organization. No, you're going to have some understanding, which means you've got to have some time and grade. You've got to spend a little time doing the job to be able to understand it. I'll never forget working at Mazzio's Pizza in Tyler, Texas, right out of the military. I thought I was all that in a bag of chips. I was a junior NCO in the Air Force when I got out, and I could do just about anything. And so when I saw the ad for a management position, I went in and applied for that management position. I can boss people around. I've done this well. And the first 3 days, I crawled around on the floor picking up pasta underneath the table where the kids had thrown it in the floor. The next 3 or 4 days, I spent in the kitchen washing the dishes so that the cooks could prepare the pizza and the lasagna for the buffet. I spent the next 2 or 3 weeks cleaning up the buffet. And by that point, I literally went to the owner of the store, the GM, and I said, you hired me as a manager, but I haven't done anything to do with cash register or telling people what to do or anything like that. And he said, no, I need to know that you can do all of the tasks that you would have to oversee, so that you can tell people properly how to do those tasks. So what you're learning right now is all the tasks that have to be done first. This is called management training. I lasted about another week and I thought that was silliness training, and I gave up on the job and I walked out. And yes, I was all of about 24 years old at the time. I was very full of myself. I was very convinced I already had all this going on, but I had no appreciation for the difficulty of the job, much less the various levels of the job or the numbers of people who are doing different tasks that a manager has to be able to oversee, to correct, to instruct, and to push them in the right direction if they're not doing their job properly. I didn't have a clue of any of that. And my lack of understanding led to a lack of appreciation. Now, maybe this is a new concept to you, the idea that without understanding, there's very little appreciation, because sometimes familiarity breeds contempt. When you know too much, you have a little contempt for the process. You feel like, yeah, whatever, I got it. I heard the story before. Nothing new under the sun. Been there, done that, got the t-shirt. And so that familiarity breeds contempt through complacency. Well, that's not a good place for a leader either. Certainly not a good place for people on the team to feel like, yeah, I've already got this figured out. I know the leader so well. I can say whatever I want to and get away with it. I can do whatever I want to. There's not going to be any consequences for me. That list goes on and on and on. Now, you might think to yourself, where in the world did you come up with an idea like this to talk about leadership, appreciation, and understanding, and how they're juxtaposed to each other? Well, I picked up some old books this last weekend. And so one of these old books is called Guiding Child Development. And Guiding Child Development in the Elementary School is a Macomber book from 1941, reprinted in 1948. The inscription in the front was a gift to someone. This particular book was given to somebody in 1949 to Mary Riddle. I don't know who that is, but her book was in an antique store, so now it's mine. But there's actually a chapter right back here, way back here on page 231, and this chapter segment under child development, appreciation and self-expression talks about appreciation and understanding. And I thought they used a brilliant analogy. They talked about a person who went through an elementary school process, and their second grade teacher loved music, and they would just sing songs at the top of their lungs, and nobody cared if they were the perfect pitch or they were in the right note or moving at the right rhythm. They would just sing in unison, and they were all happy and perfectly in harmony. And the next year, this same class of students got a teacher who was a stickler for the rules and the process, quite the disciplinarian, the drill sergeant, if you will, who said, before you can sing the song, you have to understand the music of the song. And so we are going to learn how to sight read. And this dot on this line means you make this sound. And this dot on this line makes this sound. And so they all had to learn to sing by the dots on the lines. And by the time they reached the next grade, they had another more disciplined person who actually said, we're not going to spend so much time on music and pictures and painting and art. That's silly. We need to do math. You know, the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic. Yes, I've always been baffled why writing, which starts with a W, or arithmetic, which starts with an A for arithmetic, why those are the 3 R's, but I digress. But this teacher had nothing doing with this singing just for the fun of things nonsense. In fact, we don't have time for singing. You'll be lucky if you get to recess. And so over the journey of this young person's educational life, by the time they got to high school, they pretty much hated music. There was a chance to be in the band or to perform, and they're like, nope, not interested at all. Ironically, that same person became a father whose daughter went to an elementary school where, as they define in here, the more progressive teachers had a different way of looking at things. Now, I'll let you frame the word progressive from 1941 to your own mind and imagination and decide what that means. But the more progressive teachers, a music teacher in particular, allowed the kids just to experience life. And they would take trips, and they would go on field trips for the day, and they would come back and they would write poetry about what they'd seen and experienced. And one little girl wrote a little bit of a poem of just a couple of lines, and the teacher said, that sounds like a poem. It could actually be a song. And so the entire class took a stab at her little ditty, and all of them made up a tune. And when they all decided after they voted who had the best tune, They came back and said, well, sing the same tune again. And they realized none of them could. And the teacher said, well, we should have written it down. And the students went, what? How do you write down a tune? You sing a tune, you hear a tune. How in the world could you write down a tune? And thus began the beginning of their understanding of music theory. She drew one line on the board. She put dots above it and dots below it. And when the song went up in tone, and line went up, the dot went above the line. And when it went down in tone, it went below the line. And so on and so forth. And when they realized, oh, we actually have to have, like, what if she sings faster, or she takes a breath, or she pauses, or she starts a new sentence? How do we put that on the tune? And again, music theory stepped in, and now we have notes of different types and different places and different keys. And many of these kids went on to have a great appreciation for music because they understood the process of delineating the notes one from another. That's pretty important stuff. But I have to agree that the idea of teaching the music theory before appreciating the song, that's a little complicated. But just singing the song and having no idea how to know when to go up or when to go down. I've recently started working with a small group that sings, and some of them sight read and some of them sing like I do from memory and muscle memory. And so if I hear it on the radio, my endeavor is to make it sound just like it did on the radio. That's the way I want to sing it. I've been doing karaoke for 25 years or more. I sang in high school choir and high school, middle school, and I learned to sight read and I learned a little music theory. I've never learned to play an instrument. So what's the right way? Is it to sing it like you heard it? Is it to sing it like it's written? Do you have to know how it's written and how to read what's written in order to sing it? Do you have to understand all of that to be able to appreciate it? Well, that's really the question that I'm putting in front of you. In fact, early in this book, and I believe it's page 38 or 39, well, look there. There's actually music in this book. I did not know that yet. Page 38 and 39, I saw a series of questions that I thought was really fascinating. It's the chapter unit review, and it says, these are problems for discussion. Quote, in the first grade room where the unit on, quote, the home was developed, most of the early reading experiences of the children grew out of the various unit activities. There was little or no formal reading instruction during the early months of the year. On what grounds do you justify this procedure? The statement is often heard that activity-type primary schools, there's no arithmetic. They neglect the 3 R's. Is this true? What is the fundamental difference in thinking at this point between conventional and more progressive teachers? I think this is stuff that was being debated in the classroom, might say near 100 years ago, 80 years ago, 1941 till now, 80 years ago. They talked about, is it possible to appreciate music if you don't understand music? Is it possible to learn to read if you don't have phonics? Is it possible to appreciate reading and conversation if the students are reading to each other the same monotone style of reading that everybody else has read with from a book they've all read already? Is it more powerful for the teacher to read poems to the children? You know what I didn't find in this entire book of child development is a discussion on pronouns. They were focused on education and education styles and education teaching. But I also picked up this little book, and I'm excited to get into it. I'll share some ideas after I've read some of it. This is Psychologies of 1925. Yeah, that would have been right around the time that Karl Marx and Stalin and Mao and all these guys were really making a rock on the world just before the Depression, just before the Second World War, just after the First World War, when there were a major clash of cultures and battles all over the world. On every continent on the globe, there was something significant going on. Almost exactly 100 years ago, because this is 2023, this was 1925, so 98 years difference. I'm really fascinated to get into how people thought about thinking then. If you don't take time to understand these things, it's going to be really hard to appreciate these things. And I'm not saying you have to have the same kind of library that I do or study the same kind of stuff that I do. I certainly wouldn't encourage you to try to grasp as many things as I have reached out to grab hold of to comprehend on my own. It's a full-time job all by itself. If you could see my library, I don't think you can see the library in any of the shots that I have today, but if you could see the library, you'd see that there are shelves overstacked, double deep, books on top, some on the floor, still boxes in my office that I don't have enough bookshelf for, and yet I'm still buying books because I have this insatiable desire to know. But I don't want to get caught up in so knowing that I don't understand and that I don't appreciate the everyday simplicities. I saw a Facebook post just this morning. She said, "You cannot tell me you love me if you hate my handicapped child." That's a pretty bold statement. It's a very specific statement. It's a very personal statement. Let me ask you, do you have the grace necessary to deal with someone who has certain limitations or inabilities? Do you have the ability to have grace for and a relationship with someone whose worldview is not the same as yours? Can you appreciate what you don't understand? Are you willing to become more understanding of the things that you're clueless about right now? Are you willing to learn something new, to learn someone new, to learn a new way to gain greater understanding? See, I think one of the biggest challenges in leadership these days is that we are so quickly task-oriented. We look at the goals, we look at the vision, we know what the bottom line is, we know where being in the black versus being in the red is going to change everything. And we get stuck in the mode of getting things done to the point that we don't take time to understand them. True, at the highest levels, it's not your job to know every job detail. It's your job to hire the right people to do that because there are experts in those fields. But you should have at least enough understanding of it to appreciate how difficult that job is for them to do. Enough understanding to know that if you don't hire the right person, this is going to be a disaster. Enough understanding to say, I appreciate why the investment in this service or this product is so high. It's not money wasted. It's an appreciation for the understanding you've gained by taking the time to do your homework on what exactly is it this person or this service does for me. How much time do they save me in my life? How much better do they make the quality of my product or the service that I offer to others? And yes, we should be asking that question of our government. If we don't understand our republic, our constitutional republic, we might mistake it for a democracy. If we don't understand how a constitutional or representative republic functions, we might assume it's broken when it's slow. No, it's designed to be slow, so no one can take over as a tyrant and run it their own way. It's designed that everyone would have a vote. It's designed that everybody would have a voice. It's designed like the choir teacher who just let the kids make up their own songs until they desired to know how to record a tune by writing it down. It's designed that you would be exposed to these new ideas and these new opportunities and these new fields of study, and that when you do, you would appreciate them. Take some time to get to know this world that we live in, this country that we live in, these people that you live around. Understand their way of singing or their way of learning a note. Understand the power of who they are as individuals, limitations and all. And in so doing, I think we can break down some of the divisions of racism, of educational levels, of cultural backgrounds, of religious differences. We can break those things down if we take the time to understand one another rather than simply take the bully pulpit of what we know to be our own perception of reality. Taking the time to understand others will change the level of compassion you have for them and the level of appreciation you have for them. That's a discipline that every leader should have. It starts with self-awareness. Are you willing to look in the mirror, forget about the task orientation today, and simply say, am I being the best me I can possibly be? Am I listening to understand or listening to argue? Am I conversing because it's a conversation worth having and it will make a difference in somebody's life, or am I talking to hear myself talk? Those are different. And if you'll take the time to understand the difference, you'll have a greater appreciation for one versus the other. It's just a fact. I challenge you as leaders to take the time to understand the things around you and deepen your own appreciation for them. You will invest more in those things that you appreciate because you understand them than those things that you simply accept and tolerate. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.